Welcome back. You're watching and listening. Sorry, Pip.
It's fine.
Happy New Year. I didn't read properly. You're watching and listening to Breakfast on GB News with Pip and Cameron. And apparently I keep interrupting. Sorry.
It's fine. Thank you for all your thoughts this morning. A lot of them, yes, taking the mickey out of me somewhat. But as I say, I'm only human. And if you're just tuning in, we were talking about hemorrhoids and piles because apparently it's Brown Monday and I just could not keep it together. Sheila says, Pip, I had to join in and laugh with you. Happy New Year.
Andy says, Pip is absolutely brilliant. Her reaction about having to discuss piles was hilarious.
Some people might say I'm very immature, Andy. Les says, morning, Pip, you've made my morning.
Robert says, I feel like I'm the one who's going to have to read this out because I don't think you'd manage it. Now we have Brown Monday. What about Flatulent Tuesday? Belching Wednesday. That leaves the rest of the week open. Apologies if you're having your breakfast.
And then good morning as well to Sarah, who's messaged, who said, Pip and piles. Hang on, that makes it sound like I have them. I don't. My first laugh out loud of 2024. Well, I'm glad it amused some of you. But Joe in Dorset does make the very serious point and says, don't forget, it can be signs of bowel cancer. My brother passed away of it 4 years ago. I've lost friends to this too. So, Joe, thank you very much. That is, you know, a very, very sensible contribution. OK, so let's talk newspaper stories. And joining us to go through some of the day's headlines, our lawyer. No, it's not. It's... I don't think you're a lawyer.
I've been called worse.
It's Claire Muldoon, who I'm sure you will recognise, and Labour advisor, former Labour advisor, Scarlett Maguire. Good morning to you both. Claire, what should we start with?
Well, let's start with the front page of the Express. The doctor will see you now, but only for 5 minutes. OK, we've had the junior doctor strikes, we've had the rail strikes, we've had the teacher strikes. We are now into 2024, where there's no doom and gloom with Muldoon. But look at the front pages of these papers. But we're here to turn that, aren't we, Scarlett? We're here to shed the light on the new year, and we're going to get to the great stories in a minute. Oh, sorry, did I say 5 minutes? Because that's how long you're going to see your GP for. In and out. It's almost like a revolving door now. And that's if you're lucky enough to see your GP.
I was about to say, yeah, some thought. Because actually, I had, as lots and lots of other people had, that awful lurgy in December. And somebody said, you've got to do something. And so I got hold of antibiotics. And a friend of mine said, oh, was that from the GP? And I went, you know, what country do we live in? I rang 111 and got it over the phone. I mean, honestly, trying to get an appointment with a GP is just impossible.
Do you think it's a bit of a postcode lottery, though? Because I know in Warwickshire, where some family members of mine live, they can ring up the doctors on the morning, they can get an appointment that morning, and it definitely lasts longer than 5 minutes. In London, you have to be incredibly ill to get a GP appointment.
Well, and actually, the first time I was trying to get antibiotics, I couldn't even get a phone call online, right? They said the online thing is closed for the rest of the day. I mean, it's just crazy. And you're right. I mean, there are friends of mine who out of London, who talk to their GP all the time.
Do you think, Claire, there's a lot of people who are, you know, pretty ill, but they're deterred from getting those antibiotics because they just think, I'm not going to get the appointment that I need?
There might be, but I think the problem is actually deeper than that because of the transient nature of the GP practice. Historically, your GP used to be a family, would treat your families, would treat the community, would know everyone within that community, would know what's going round in terms of infections or viruses. Now the GPs, they move in, they move out, they get locums in, they get locums out. We're not seeing the same person. And what you're finding is then they're treating the problem that you present with instead of looking at the holistic picture. You could be on medication for high blood pressure. You could be on medication for heartburn or something. Instead of looking at the person holistically and saying what's actually going on in your life. Did you know that type 2 diabetes is stress-related as well? It's not related to whatever. And they're not taking the time to deal with patients. And therefore, I think patients are then falling back on the 111 service, which I don't think is fit for purpose, because the 111 service, more often than not, they'll be frightened to not send someone to A&E. Sorry, guys, clues in the name, accident, emergency. You walk into any A&E, there'll be people just sitting there. oh, I've got a broken fingernail. Oh, I've got something in my eye. That type of...
I wonder
of
how
the
busy
people
A&Es were
are in
last
that
night, New
state.
Year's Eve. I wonder how clogged up they got.
Yeah.
But surely GPs have time to read patients' medical history before they see them, or are you saying
they don't.
that they can't?
I don't think they do. I really don't think they do. They've got issues. Sorry, not issues. They've got the ability. They've got the infrastructure to read patients' records before. It's more often than not now a phone call. And if you phone a patient, how on earth is a doctor being able to look at a patient, to see their gait, to see how they walk in, to see how they present, to see how, you know, when was the last time you got your chest heard? That used to be the first thing a GP would do. You know, sit down, check your pulse, listen to your chest and move on, and then diagnose from there. None of that.
And because there was a consistency with your GP, that was a very comforting thing
That's
as well.
what my initial point was. Yeah. Exactly.
OK, let's move on to... Well, Scarlett, you tell us.
Well, it's a fascinating story about how, though, at the heart of the Daily Mail says there was a communist spy at the heart of the BBC. I mean, actually, it was at Bush House, which is the international, or used to be, the World Service for the BBC, where I used to work. And actually, there were lots and lots of ex-communists, or people who'd escaped communist countries. And what's odd about this story is you can't see where it comes from. Now, whether I mean, it says it's an exclusive investigation, but actually, so does it come from the release of government papers and precisely? And I mean, I don't think anybody in the World Service will be very surprised that, of course, it was infiltrated by the communists during the war. I mean, when I was there, I don't know if you remember the Bulgarian who was killed with an umbrella. I mean,
yes.
It was incredible what
was
going on. Gorgy Markov, who was
What year was that?
it was a long time ago.
Right.
It was a very, but it was, I mean, you know, there is, and then there's the normal story about was Michael Foot a communist? I mean, actually, what they say now is that they thought of, well, they say that he would have been useless. I mean, I'm not sure that that's quite true, but there was no question that Michael Foot ever took money or anything to do the checks. So this is, I mean, this is a sort of, it's one of these really frustrating stories that could be quite fun, and I'm sure anybody working who worked in the Czech service must have known. I mean,
And the BBC, we should say, says it's the first, well, has told the newspaper, the Daily Mail, it's the first it's heard of the historical allegations surrounding a communist spy at the heart of the BBC, but they're taking them seriously.
But frankly, I mean, if you were the KGB or whatever the Czech equivalent was, and you haven't put somebody in the Czech service, you're not doing your job properly.
Claire, let's talk about something a bit lighter. The gin genius.
Oh, yes.
What's this about?
Oh, yes.
Do you like your gin?
Oh, I love my gin. Mind you, I don't actually... You know, is anyone giving up anything for January? Do we do this now? Do we do dry January?
My track record is appalling.
Do we make... Scarlett, what are you doing? Have you made any lists of what you're doing? Any New Year's resolutions?
No, and actually now my excuse is people who do dry January have an alcohol problem. Right. I have decided.
Good. So I tell you, the gin genius, this is a lovely, lovely story of a local girl in the UK, and she's made her own gin. But not only has she made her own gin, she's actually won the double gin gold medal in which is the UK's tallest working windmill with grain, because her family are milliners, not hat makers, but millers.
Oh, brilliant.
So
what's her name, then?
Her name is...
That would have
Lily
been a lot
Craven.
of competition.
She's only 23,
Gin is so
and she won the
loved,
New
isn't it?
York World Wine and Spirits Competition. So she gets her 44% tipple, quite strong, is £44 a bottle. It's distilled with juniper from Tuscany and grapefruit and orange peel from the Mediterranean.
Well done, her.
Lily added, I set out to create the best possible London dry gin using our wheat grown on our family farm. Taking inspiration from our family's milling heritage, we use the power of the wind to grind the grain between the millstones of the tallest working windmill in the UK. And this flour is the foundation on which the spirit is created.
Fantastic. Well, I'm sure they did great business last night. Let's get your weather forecast.